Production and broadcast costs for Sedgwick County Commission meetings have been underwritten by Sedgwick County. KPTS welcomes comments from the public on its broadcast of the County Commission hearings. Viewers are invited to write to County Commission Broadcast, KPTS, 320 West 21st Street, Wichita, Kansas, 67203.
You can't hear her? Hi, this is Christy Zukovich. Welcome to the April 1st Sedgwick County Commission meeting. We're glad you're joining us today. Of course, we've got lots of things going on around the community, and we'll use this time to let you know about some of those activities you might enjoy with your friends and family. Coming up at the Sedgwick County Zoo on Saturday, we have the Easter Extravaganza. Good time for you to go out and enjoy Easter egg hunting activities and all kinds of other things, and of course see the animals, and that will be from 8:30 to 3. Coming up at the Interest Bank Arena, we do have the Thunder in action tonight, and again on the 4th and the 8th, and then we will have the Force in action on April 3rd, and of course Justin Aldean in concert on April 9th. We'd also remind you that Exploration Place is about to celebrate their 15th anniversary, their 15th birthday, and they will have special events on April 11th and 12th, so again, hope that you will head out and to support these activities. Commissioners, you know, we always talk about what's on the agenda. So today, on today's agenda, I wanted to give you a little view of what's coming up. And what we're going to learn today is that we'll learn that Commissioner Unruh is really a big KU fan.
Oh, that is incorrect. I don't know how we call default on that. I'm purple.
Okay. Well, I was sure that was what was on the agenda. We'll learn that Commissioner Norton is really Santa.
I believe that.
And I'm watching every one of you.
We'll learn that Commissioner Peterjohn is really a Jimmy Carter supporter.
I've always been a big fan of peanuts.
Oh, boy.
We'll learn that this summer Commissioner Howell will be supporting open carry water pistols.
Do it already.
And you know, we always save you to last. We'll learn that Commissioner Ransaw has created a new dessert called the Spotted Skunk. And of course, April Fools, we know that none of those are probably true. I don't know. Maybe, Commissioner Ransaw, you have created a spotted skunk, or we could help you out with that. Maybe a little bit of brownies, vanilla ice cream, little plops of chocolate syrup or something.
Well, another thing we're going to learn is Christy Zugovich no longer works for Sedgwick.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we'll just say that, Mr. Chairman, I bet you can get the meeting underway and we can get to real business.
All right, I think I can. Well, thank you very much, Christy. With that, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners for April 1st, 2015. Madam Clerk, first item.
Invocation to be observed by Pastor Daniel Circle. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
If you'll bow your heads as I pray. Heavenly Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so from your boundless and gracious nature. In the Scriptures, you've said the citizens ought to obey governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray this assembled county board, I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of welfare and the true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around Sedgwick County. In your most blessed name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Unruh.
Present.
Commissioner Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Present.
Chairman Ransaw.
Present. Next item, please.
Proclamations. Item A. Proclamation declaring Veterans Coming Home Day.
Commissioners, I have the following proclamation to read into the record. Whereas veterans have stepped forward to serve our country and defend our way of life, with honor and distinction, generations of servicemen and women have taken up arms to win our independence, preserve our union, and secure our freedom. From the Minutemen to our post-9/11 generation, these heroes have put their lives on the line so that we might live in a world that is safer, freer, and more just, and we owe them a profound debt of gratitude. And whereas it is our obligation to serve our veterans well as they have served us, we must ensure that every veteran has a chance to share in the opportunity he or she has helped to defend. And whereas veterans returning home from service have earned our respect and deserve our attention as they strive to reintegrate into the community they call home. Coming back to civilian life brings new challenges, new opportunities, and compelling stories of courage and accomplishment. And whereas we must come together as a community to support these veterans and extend our commitment to welcome them home and provide resources and tools and assist them in finding their voice and telling their stories of service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Richard Randall, Chairman of the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners, do hereby recognize April 2nd, 2015 as Veterans Coming Home Day with respect for and in recognition of the contribution of our service members have made to the cause of peace and freedom around the world. What's the will of the Board?
I move we adopt the proclamation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransaw.
Aye. And I think we have Michelle Gores from
Yes, I'm the president
KPTS.
CEO of KPTS Channel 8, the PBS station here, the one's broadcasting the meeting today. So thank you so much for the proclamation. Just a couple of quick words about our initiative that we've started and how this fits in. For Veterans Coming Home is a mission all of its own. And like any mission, it requires careful preparation, disciplined execution, and contingency plans just in case things don't go as intended, because we all know that never happens. Regardless, the primary objective for those who have served is to find the appropriate support and resources once they return home. As part of a national partnership with PBS, KPTS has created a localized website, kpts.veteranscominghome.org. It's on your screen there, and you have cards before you, gentlemen, with information about that website and the address again, so you can check it out. This is a place where veterans can find information and resources to assist in their reintegration back into society after service. These are tools that they need to be successful upon their return, and it's a one-stop place for everything they need. It includes stories of service as well as resources and information for them, and it's all local. Community stories, community resources to assist our men and women of service right here at home. KPTS is very proud to be able to offer this service to our veterans. It's the least that we can do to support those that have sacrificed so much for us. So thank you very much for today's proclamation. We appreciate it, your time and attention, and your dedication to serving this community as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
I don't see any questions.
Great. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Item B, proclamation declaring National Walking Day.
Commissioners, I have the following proclamation to read into the record. Whereas cardiovascular disease, including coronary heart disease and stroke, are the nation's leading cause of death and a leading cause of disability, accounting for about 1 of every 3 deaths of Americans per year. And whereas the direct and indirect costs of cardiovascular disease, including lost productivity, are estimated at $320 billion, and obesity is a significant factor driving health care spending, accounting for an estimated 12% of growth in recent years. And whereas activity can reduce cardiovascular risk and may increase life expectancy, but 50% of adults and 62% of children do not get daily vigorous activity, and whereas regular walking has many proven benefits for an individual's overall health, brisk walking for at least 30 minutes a day can help lower blood pressure, increase HDL, control weight, and control blood sugar through improved use of insulin in the body. All of these changes help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. Whereas on National Walking Day, April 1st, the American Heart Association calls on everyone to wear sneakers, walk for 30 minutes, and start a regular walking program, and encourages Americans to become more physically active by walking. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Richard Ranzau, Chairman of the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim April 1st, 2015 as National Walking Day in Sedgwick County, and urge all citizens to show their support for walking and the fight against heart disease, and commemorate this day by taking time to walk. Commissioners, what's the will of the board?
I move we adopt the proclamation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. And we have Nancy Dooling from the American Heart Association to receive the proclamation.
Yes, and thank you very much for the proclamation. The American Heart Association is inviting the public to support the fight against heart disease by participating in this special National Walking Day. This is the day that adults nationwide can make the pledge to start walking and become active and heart healthy. Here in Sedgwick County, we have invited the public to bring their sneakers, and hopefully it's all on your calendar today, to join us at noon just right outside here at Central and Main. And we just want to educate how easy it is to do a 30-minute walk. And so we have a great route plan for you to walk over to the Keeper of Plains. So we would love to have all you down here at noon at Central and Main to join us for the National Walking Day. Thank you so much for letting us bring forward our mission to educate the Sedgwick County citizens.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for being here today.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Citizen inquiries, item C, request to address the Board of County Commissioners regarding nepotism in the Sedgwick County employment policy.
Please give us your name and address for the record.
Victoria Lovato, Andover, Kansas, 1809, North Columbine, 67002. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. My name's Victoria. I'm here today to address the nepotism policy held by Sedgwick County EMS. I'm a newly graduated paramedic from Hutchinson Community College, and I'm striving to get out and save lives. I've never known my path in life more than now, than at this very moment. And my sister, Sherday Hornberger, currently works for Sedgwick County as a paramedic and has for 4 years. I have looked up to her as a role model, and ever since I was little, and especially now, ever since I started my career path in EMS, I've always wanted to work for Sedgwick County. It's understood the policy was placed to avoid favoritism and conflict, and the difficult part of this policy is that EMS is a family-driven organization. I feel that the shared values, knowledge, and morals between my sister and I will help contribute not only to our careers, but in the EMS as a county as well. I, as a paramedic, strive to save lives and help others in their most vulnerable time of need, and I promise to do nothing but. But I have the honor of being inspired by two highly intelligent captains and paramedics from Sedgwick County, one of them being Tim Robin, and the other one being Kathy Beaumart. I do have letters of recommendations from both of them, as I can present to you, if that's okay. I gained a copious amount of knowledge from the two captains and the other highly trained and experienced paramedics from Sedgwick County throughout my internship through paramedic school, and I would be honored if given the chance to learn and share my knowledge through working with Sedgwick County EMS as they did for me. There's a wonderful system placed with the different shifts. There's X day and nights and O day and nights. My sister and I could be placed on opposite shifts, so I was never to be supervised or work along with her. This has proven to be successful in the past, and I care very much about my career and the people of Sedgwick County. And all I'm asking is to be given the chance to show my knowledge, perseverance, and compassion through EMS through the county of Sedgwick County.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we receive and file.
Second that.
And if you want to give us any information for the record, that's fine too.
There's 5 each recommendations for all of them.
Okay.
I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming. We've spoken on the phone about this and had some emails, and I appreciate you taking the time and talking to us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Unruh,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Appointments. Item D, resolution appointing Jerry Watts to the Sedgwick County Animal Care Advisory Board.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Magana, Acting County Counselor. The Animal Care Advisory Board has been reestablished in 2015, and we're in the process of filling vacancies. This board has 10 members. Each commissioner has 2 appointments. Each appointment is for a 4-year term. This resolution is for Commissioner Unruh's, one of his appointments, appointing Jerry Watts. This term would expire March 31st, 2019. I recommend you adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we would include this item plus the next item together if possible, appointing Jerry Watts and Sandra Gritz for the same board. So we'd make a motion we adopt the resolutions. It's possible.
Resolutions D and E, we can combine those together.
That's acceptable.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. And are there one of these people here today?
Ms. Watts is here.
Okay.
Sandy.
If you'll, oh yeah, okay.
Good morning. All right. I do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Sedgwick County Animal Care Advisory Board. So help me God.
Yes,
I do. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you want to say anything, you may.
Can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, Clerk, next item.
Item F, resolution appointing Dustin No as the Rockford Township trustee.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion we adopt the resolution.
Second.
May I make a couple comments?
You may.
I just wanted to let the board know I did have lengthy discussions with Mr. No, and I think he's a very good candidate for this position. He is truly committed to the position. He's going to pour himself into it. He's got a long connection to the county, I'm sorry, to the township, and I just think he's going to be a great appointment. So I'm looking forward to having you serve there and seeing some of these problems you guys have had as a township resolved today. So thank you for being here and for stepping up to the plate.
Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. I do solemnly swear that I will support the...
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say
We need to
gotta
call a vote. Call a vote.
Commissioner Unruh,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransaw.
Aye. We're okay now, right?
Yes.
Now you can
I
proceed.
thought
Sorry.
so. Okay, we're better. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Sedgwick County Rockford Township trustee, so help me God. Congratulations. Thank you.
All right.
I just want to thank the commission, especially Mr. Howell, for their assistance to the members of the board of Rockford Township and to the residents of Rockford Township in getting this matter resolved. It's been a long road, a little over a year, and I'm glad we can finally put this behind us and get to working on what really matters, and that's the continuous improvement of Rockford Township and the representation that the citizens deserve. Again, I thank you, and I look forward to being an asset to the members of Rockford Township. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
New business, item G, County Extension Quarterly Report.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Bob Nyer, your County Extension Horticulture Agent. This is our quarterly report on your Extension education programs. First of all, Angela Jones, our County Extension Director, is taking a training session today and asked me to give this in her place. The Extension Service, Sedgwick County Extension Service, is a partnership with Kansas State University where we provide research-based information for both rural and urban clientele in agriculture, in horticulture, family and consumer sciences, and 4-H and youth development. Today I'm updating you on the ornamental horticulture programs. Our extension agents, there's two of us in horticulture, we provide educational programming assistance to commercial horticulture industry as well as train 275 Extension Master Gardener volunteers, and they provide the information and programming to the home gardeners. We are in our fourth year of drought. It's kind of hard to believe. It rains, but still really dry out there. Wichita alone has lost over 38,000 trees in parks and street side since 2000, and we're seeing that throughout the rest of the county too. We emphasize drought-tolerant trees in our educational programs for replanting. We've been providing educational support in the development of a new nonprofit group called IC Trees, and there's a flyer up there for you. This is being developed by Barney Barnhard, one of our Extension Master Gardeners, and he got the idea about this through going through one of our volunteer training classes. IC Trees' purpose is to restore, promote, and protect Wichita's trees, and this will include working with Sedgwick County on some initiatives. We provide drought-tolerant we provided drought-tolerant tree selection information at the Outdoor Living and Landscape Show. We handed out over 2,000 stratified acorns this spring, and they're ready to grow. We've sponsored 20 hours of seminars at the show, Outdoor Living Show, and with attendance of 1,304 at the seminars. We're holding our 14th annual Tree Festival, and you have the flyer on that at the Extension office on April 11th. We'll be having seminars, demonstrations on planting and growing landscape trees. We do have two of the top people in the state from research and community development on speaking on their 4 trees. On the update on the courthouse landscape, the flowers in commercial areas and downtowns, they add a quality of life to communities, and the plantings you've had out here for the last 3 years have been provided, you've been paying for them, but all the labor and installation and maintenance is done by our Extension Master Gardeners. And Charlene Snyder, who had been leading that, passed away this winter, but her crew will keep on doing that if you'd like that to keep it looking good in front here. Wanted to let you know about an award. Our Extension Master Gardeners will be receiving the top national award for horticulture therapy at the International Master Gardener Convention in Council Bluffs, Iowa in September. This is for teaching accessible gardening programs to clients and activity directors at facilities for differently abled gardeners. This includes the ARC, Cerebral Palsy Research Foundation, VA, and the Via Christi. Thank you for listening. I'm open for any questions you might have.
Commissioner Peter John.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question here, if I could, on this report. It says the trees produce oxygen and filter the air. One mature tree produces all the oxygen needed for 2 people. Their leaves filter the air and reduce air pollution.
Yep.
Can you give me more details in terms of what air pollutants the plants are?
Mainly pulls out particulate matter. They'll attach to that and then go on down. And carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. All plants bring in carbon dioxide and release oxygen.
That's very correct. And in fact, you and I are both exhaling carbon dioxide into the atmosphere this very minute, as are all other mammals. You know, I consider carbon dioxide part of the cycle of life. I don't consider it a pollutant. And when we put out material that says air pollution, I think it's at best misleading, and frankly at worst I think it's factually incorrect. If we had no carbon dioxide in this atmosphere, plants could not grow. If there were not plants, besides Bob Nyer not having a horticultural position, there wouldn't be any plants growing in Kansas and any place else in the world, and every life form that's dependent upon plants would be in a world of hurt. And so I have a problem with the politically correct notion that carbon dioxide, which is part of the natural cycle of life, is a per se pollutant, and I urge folks who believe that to stop exhaling carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But having made that as a comment, I wanted to try and get a better understanding here, because it's very important that the young people understand that natural cycle. Obviously, horticulture is vitally important. We're an agricultural state in many ways right now, and being in a position to be able to grow plants is absolutely critical for our economy and I think our nation's future. And anything that we might put out that might create problems or might be misleading in that regard, I don't think is helpful.
We will look at an edit on that, but there's things in addition to just animals breathing that it can come out from. I'll just
if they're
leave it
able
at
to
that.
absorb other things, that's well and good, whether it's particulate matter or anything else that's out there. I had particularly volatile organic compounds. I don't know if they.
All right.
But I've never seen that claim made. But I have seen the claim made on carbon dioxide. So appreciate you coming down and giving us our quarterly report. Thank you.
What's the will of the board?
I move we receive and file.
I'll second that. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. Thank you, Bob, very
Thank you.
much for your presentation today. Next item, please.
Item H, dissolution of Joint City-County Board of Zoning Appeals and creation of County BZA.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Parnicott, Assistant County Counselor. This matter was placed on the agenda by the request of the chairman, so we prepared a resolution and am prepared to brief you on this. I don't necessarily have a staff recommendation to make, but certainly will answer any questions after I get done with my presentation. We do have to have a Board of Zoning Appeals. It is required as a condition of having our zoning code in place, because the Board of Zoning Appeals provides a very valuable function of being a safety valve to when a strict application of the zoning code might create an undue hardship on a property owner who wants to use his property for some purpose. So the Board of Zoning Appeals is a necessary function of the planning and zoning activities of the county. and we've had one since I've been here, of course, and even farther back than that. Prior to 2013, we had a county board of zoning appeals that was consisting of 5 members. The Board of County Commissioners in 2013 decided to consolidate the County Board of Zoning Appeals with the City Board of Zoning Appeals and created a joint City-County Board of Zoning Appeals that was effective as of January 1st, 2013. This proposed resolution would go back to what we had in place prior to 2013, 5-member board, 4-year terms, pretty much the same type of jurisdiction in terms of considering variances and appeals. We would also provide for them to hear exceptions when and if exceptions are created as part of the zoning code. Fees can be set for the Board of Zoning Appeals. You currently have fees set for the joint City-County Board of Zoning Appeals. We would adopt those same fees as they were recently amended, of course, back earlier this year, but would have those in place. And the one interesting part or thing I should mention with the Board of Zoning Appeals is they are really a separate board from you guys. And if anybody's unhappy with the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals, that gets taken to the district court rather than going through you. So they are a separate board in terms of appellate jurisdiction to the district courts. If I can answer any other questions, I'd be more than happy to. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to you for discussion and comment.
Thank you, Bob. First, I'd like to ask if anyone from the public would like to speak on this issue. Please give us your name and address. As if we don't know it already.
You know, I'm thinking about the day, April Fool. Lonnie Wright, 1721 South Lulu, Wichita. I prefer you not adopt the resolution because to me it's moving away from our consolidation and it's bringing forth a separate identity of the county from the city, which I think a lot of our residents don't see that kind of distinction. And it would give us 2 sets of rules. I prefer we try to work on the consolidation and rely on the citizen boards granting variances when it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Anybody else? Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments for Bob? Commissioner Norton?
Bob, over the last 5 years, how many times has the BZA met, or how many last year?
Within the last 2 years, we've had one county Board of Zoning Appeals case. Within the last 5 years, the 3 prior years involving the county-run BZA, I can remember 2 or 3, probably maybe 4 tops. So we run an average of 1 or 2 a year at best.
Seems like it's much to do about nothing to change this. There's very few cases, and the citizens that have been appointed are legally responsible for the decisions, and it is our appointees, so it makes up folks that we have faith in. So I see no reason to split this back up, particularly depending on the ability to pull people together, have meetings. There's so few of them, it becomes hard to find people to serve because they don't meet very often. So personally, I'm not going to support this today.
Commissioner Peter John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate citizen input this morning, but I have a little bit different take on it. We've had this board in place, and Commissioner Norton's absolutely right. It hasn't met very often, but having said that, the structure that we put it into, where it was in effect connected with the appointees from the city council and not just the appointees from the county, I view it as problematical. And to make it even worse, in my opinion, you had folks who city appointments, it becomes unclear where the responsibility lies. And so even though it hasn't met very, very frequently, and I think that's a good sign in a sense in terms of that the zoning system's working, I'd feel much more comfortable reverting to the system we had in place, and I will be supporting the measure this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I understand the logic of separating these boards again, but this has been a joint board now just for 2 years, actually, and the combining of these boards, metropolitan area building MABC, Metropolitan Area Building Code Department, if I got that all right, was a long and arduous task to get those boards combined, and the Board of Zoning Appeals combined, and we wanted to have a unified system for everybody in Sedgwick County. And this was worked on real hard by the trade associations and by the Wichita Area Association of Builders, and I think everybody was on board. I think dismantling that hard work after just a couple of years is not the right step to take. I think our citizens in general want us to have consolidations and combinations and efficiencies, and this was a step in that direction. And to dismantle it this time, I think it would be premature without clear evidence of some problem that we're trying to solve. So I will also not be supporting this resolution.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Bob, do you have any idea approximately what percentage of Sedgwick County is contained within the city limits of Wichita? Any idea?
Well, all of Sedgwick County is within city limits of Wichita.
I said it backwards. How much of Wichita how much of our county is Wichita?
I do not have that a good number on that, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
About 75%.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I heard a number much smaller than that previously. It's, I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that question, but...
Mr. Schlegel is here from the Planning Department. He may have an idea of what to give you.
As of the 2010 census, it was about 75% of the Sedgwick County population lived in the city of Wichita.
Yeah, that's really not my question. I'm talking about land mass. How much? Talking about the borders of the city of Wichita. How much of that?
No, I do not know that number.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know the answer to that question. I've heard somewhere around 25 or 30%, but maybe I'm wrong by that. I think there's around 30%. I guess that's right. I guess my thought would be that that the county ideology may be vastly different than those from the city. And again, this is really not negative towards them in any way, but I just think that people who live in a city and have a mindset of city standards and desires and vision might make different decisions than someone who's focused on county issues. And so, to me, I think this board separation actually does make sense. I understand it worked very well for many, many years, and so I guess I would be supportive of the resolution. Thank you.
Commissioner Peter John?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just kind of touch base because I've heard differing numbers on the number of square miles in Wichita, but Sedgwick County is a little bit over 1,000 square miles, and I've seen slightly varying numbers in terms of that. I was just trying to pull up some information when you raised that question because I thought it might be something I might be able to pull down from online real quickly. But the numbers I've heard have been more in the neighborhood of about 175 to 200 square miles. But I only have about not a huge confidence in that figure. But according to location I've just popped up on my screen, it says just a shade under 164 square miles is the city of Wichita.
So do you know what you said? The county has how many square miles altogether?
A little over 1,000.
So we're talking about roughly 15%, 16%, I guess. Then 16% of the county.
Between 15 and 20%, I'd feel real comfortable with, Commissioner.
I guess again. So to reiterate, then I guess I just see that a large portion of our county being directed by those that happen to live within one of our cities that represents about 15% of our land mass. To me, is not the right policy. So, again, in making that argument, I would support the resolution today. Thank you.
Bob, clarify. This BZA is related to the MAPC process. It's not going to hold up MABCD consolidation.
It is separate. This has to do with the Planning and Zoning Department, not the Code and Building Code Enforcement Department.
Right. That's my understanding. Those are two different issues. I think there's some confusion about this. This is not dismantling or disrupting anything to do with the MABCD consolidation, which I think we've all supported here. Fact of the matter is, as it currently exists, half of the people that vote on this our City of Wichita appointees. I'm not sure it makes sense to have City of Wichita appointees to decide decisions for people out in the unincorporated area. There's often a different viewpoint, and I think how we had it before was working just fine for years and never should have been changed to begin with. And I know my appointee to the BZA was very disappointed to see this change originally happen, so we'll just put it back to how it was, and I think this is a better way to address these sorts of issues, so I'll be supportive. That being said, we don't have a motion at this time, do we?
We do not.
Commissioners, what's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt the resolution.
I'll second that. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh?
No.
Commissioner Norton?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Aye.
Chairman Ransall?
Aye. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item I, resolution to amend building code provisions of the Wichita-Sedgwick County Unified Building and Trade Code and to add a provision regarding standards for accessibility within the Sedgwick County jurisdiction.
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. Tom Stolz, Director of the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, and I apologize. I'm fighting laryngitis this morning, so I've got water close by, and I actually have a pinch hitter in case it gives out. I'm here today to discuss a resolution which, if approved, would effectively remove the Sedgwick County jurisdiction from certain ADA plus amendments from within the current Unified Building and Trade Code. Some quick background. Prior to 2012, the City of Wichita's Office of Central Inspection and Sedgwick County's Code Department operated independently of one another. Both jurisdictions operated under the exact same international code sets, but both had constructed certain amendments to those codes for their specific jurisdictions. During 2012 and the months leading up to the merger of the two departments, legal staff from both the county and the city worked with code staff to consolidate the city and county amendments into one document, which became known as the Unified Building and Trade Code. This was quite an undertaking because MABCD is responsible for enforcing 12 different code manuals, including ADA and fair housing standards. Since the onset of the merger, MABCD has adopted new trade codes and are currently in the process of adopting new residential and building codes, commercial building codes. During these adoption processes, staff and key community partners have been scrutinizing the hundreds of amendments contained within the Unified Code. Regarding the trade laws, which we adopted, some of the local amendments were kept and some were not, depending on various circumstances, as we adopted the new code. We are currently going through a similar process with building code, commercial building code. As we were reviewing the building code, Chairman Ranzau brought to my attention a series of code amendments under Section 2 of the Unified Code pertaining to accessibility requirements. On face value, these amendments appeared to add regulation above and beyond those called for by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Upon closer review, 4 of the 8 questioned amendments did add regulation over and above ADA and thus are termed ADA plus regulation. When county and city legal staff combined the code amendments back in 2012, these amendments were brought over from old City of Wichita amendment sets. Presently, the chairman requested county legal staff and I create today's resolution to remove Sedgwick County from those ADA plus amendments and bring the matter before the entire Board of County Commissioners to discuss. The germane amendments regarding today's resolutions are as follows, and there's 4. Amendment 2.21070. Title III of ADA gives an exemption for religious entities and private clubs. The current amendment in UBTC takes that amendment or takes that exemption away. Thus, all religious entities and clubs are should comply with ADA. The upshot is, if the BOCC passes this resolution today, it will grant the ADA exemption for religious entities and private clubs built in Sedgwick County, unincorporated county. Second amendment is item 2.21080. ADA does not mandate the addition of unisex bathrooms in commercial buildings. It recommends it, but it doesn't mandate it. This amendment requires buildings with 6 water closets or more build a unisex bathroom. The upshot is, if the BOCC passes this resolution today, unisex bathrooms will not be required in county jurisdiction. Amendment 2.21130. Normal ADA regulations call for bar or counters where over 10 seats are available to modify and lower a 36-inch portion of the bar assembly to accommodate wheelchair accessibility. The amendment expands that modified space to at least 60 inches so that a client in a wheelchair plus one other patron can be seated together. Thus, if the Commission passes this resolution today, the extended bar modification will not be required in county jurisdiction. And finally, Amendment 2.2.1140. ADA calls for universal design rules for parking in front of commercial businesses. The design calls for parking stalls that measure 8 feet by 5 feet, with every 7th stall van accessible, and those van accessible stalls measure 11 feet by 5 feet, 16 total feet. This amendment calls for every parking stall to be van accessible, the current amendment. Thus, all parking stalls, ADA parking stalls, have to be 11 by 5, 16 total feet. Hence, if the Commission passes this resolution today, the universal design standard would be held for county commercial projects, as written in ADA. In conclusion, after this resolution was drafted, I vetted it in front of two bodies. One was the Wichita-Sedgwick County Building Codes and Standards Appeals Board. This group voted in support of the resolution by an 8-to-1 vote as a matter of simplifying the current code followed in this jurisdiction. The dissenting member, who is a major commercial builder in this county, voted not to support the resolution because he prefers code amendments to be the same in the city and the county. He indicated he would be supportive of the resolution if also adopted by City of Wichita. I also discussed the resolution with the Wichita-Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board. This group voted 13-0 against the resolution with 3 abstentions, those abstentions being county employees. This group viewed this resolution as a setback to the rights of Americans with disabilities and described the action to me as a policy of exclusion. At this point, staff recommends discussion of this matter, and we will take whatever action deemed appropriate by the Commission. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. First, I'd like to ask if anyone from the public would like to speak on this issue. We have 2. Let's let Lonnie and then.
I'll be polite. Lonnie Wright, 1721 South Lulu, Wichita. I oppose this concept of the county having a separate identity to the city. Speaking about the previous issue and what continues, I don't feel most of our residents have that distinguishing thing going on. And I feel like the county's wanting to fight against the city and the whole spirit of the consolidation. You know, 75 or most of the work on zoning is the city. Most of the people affected are the city people. And yet, they gave up a proportionate membership on the board. Half of it could be the county against the city. So I am disappointed with that spirit. Secondly, the ADA proposal, I think, is unnecessary. These are typically the things that our technical, quasi-judicial technical boards deal with. Our building, plumbing, mechanical, electric. We regularly get, not monthly, but we regularly get requests for variances to the code because there needs to be exceptions. Our whole thing with our technical boards are when we get these national codes and stuff, we go through there, we see what we don't need, what's not appropriate. But still, there may be instances where the strict application, isn't appropriate. And I think we don't need more government here. We don't need to make it 2 different rules for the city and the county on ADA. It needs to be simplified. I feel instead of enacting or doing this, we need to let the boards do their job. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Calvert. I'm an attorney. My office is at 532 North Market in Wichita. And the ADA is the only reason that this podium is low enough for me to utilize when I'm speaking. I would like to tell you that I've been working on ADA work for about 20 years. I went to college at Emporia State University. Back then it was called Kansas State Teachers College. The reason I went to that college was that it was the only college in the state of Kansas that was accessible to people with disabilities. The next closest college for me to go to was in Illinois. No other college here was accessible. Let's fast forward to the ADA, which was passed in 1990. And now and since then, all colleges are accessible. And not only all colleges, all businesses. The ADA had certain regulations adopted by the Department of Justice. Those were adopted in 1992. They're called ADAG, ADAAG. Those are the standards that we lived with for about 18 years. Those standards needed some modification in order to make them really good for people in Kansas. And we have modified those a little bit for ourselves. And those are the ADA Plus. Those are the 8 in particular that you have on your agenda. Since that happened, the standards were changed. In the late 1990s, the United States Access Board started working on new set of standards. The Access Board, which really doesn't have any power, adopted the new standards in 2004 and sent them over to the Department of Justice, which studied them, modified them a little bit, and finally adopted them in 2010, and those became the 2010 ADA standards. Those standards and the FHA, Fair Housing Act standards, adopted 4 of these standards that you're considering today. So if the resolution passes, it won't have any effect on 4 of those standards. As to the other 4, it will have a certain effect. The history of the ADA in Wichita is that in the 90s and the early 2000s, there were difficulties with ADA enforcement and the ADA application by the city of Wichita. There was a lawsuit started in 2004 against the city, and that lawsuit was resolved by a settlement agreement. As part of that settlement agreement, the Wichita Access Advisory Board was created. I ended up being on that board, and was elected chairman of it, and I've been trying to get out of that job ever since and have been totally unsuccessful, and I'm still the chairman of it. Later in the 2000s, I had occasion to meet with representatives of the county, including the county manager, and the statement was made, we're going to comply with the ADA and we're going to adopt it and we're going to really get aggressive on it because it's the right thing to do. And I think I'm quoting you correctly, Mr. Manager. And the commission adopted that philosophy. The county hired a full-time ADA coordinator. The county eventually asked that they be allowed to join the Wichita Access Advisory Board. That was done. The board became the Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board with representatives appointed by each commissioner, a representative, I think, by the county manager, and plenty of representatives from the county. With that kind of history, it's been the philosophy of this county and this commissioner and this commission historically that we would be a county of inclusion, not a county of exclusion. This resolution is absolutely a step backward. Now, I've written to each of you the same letter, and I am not going to read that letter to you. At this point, I would like for it to be incorporated and become part of my remarks, but it addresses in particular those 4 areas that would be affected by this resolution. The first is the unisex bathroom. And, you know, until you've spent time in a wheelchair, and I can almost assure you that if each of you live long enough, you will spend some time in a wheelchair. Most people die before they have that type of disability, but you got that to look forward to, and it really isn't all that bad because the seating in the arena is really great. But I want to tell you that there are people whose disabilities are so severe that they need assistance going to the bathroom. And many of those people have spouses or other family members of the opposite sex. And that's why they use unisex, which are also called family bathrooms. Check the Turnpike bathrooms that have unisex bathrooms. There are plenty of times that you have to wait to get into that bathroom. The regulation, the proposed change on bars simply says that if I go to a place like Applebee's, like Bite Me Barbecue, which I go to when my wife is out of town, and they have a long bar there, if they only have a bar for one wheelchair, and that's all the wider it has to be in a lowered area, that means I sit there and my wife sits higher. We really do like to sit together. And the modification simply requires that it be 60 inches wide instead of 36 inches wide. As far as parking is concerned, the fact of the matter is that existing ADA, the old one, simply said that a van accessible space was 8 feet wide with an 8-foot access aisle. Unfortunately, there are too many people that believe that the access aisle is a parking space. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've come out of a store to find that somebody's parked in the access aisle. I can't get the door open to the ramp, and all I can do is just wait for them. With the change made by the city, it's marvelous because every space is an accessible space for ramp vans, and the use of ramp vans is growing in leaps and bounds. When the ADA came out in 1990, we didn't have ramp vans. Those are something that are a creature of new technology. And the fourth area is to exclude churches from the building part. Now, keep in mind that the ADA consists of more than just the access. It consists also of employment regulations. Churches and private clubs will still be excluded under that, and they're excluded now from application of the ADA. But I have yet, and I spoke with the pastor here this morning, I have yet to talk to a pastor who has said to me, we really don't want people with disabilities to come to our church. And every church I've been aware of, to the extent they are able to do it, they're able to financially do it, to the extent that the church is physically able to be modified, is modifying them. And it's a no-brainer for churches. But to approve the exclusion of people with disabilities from churches is just beyond the realm of my way of thought. In short, which I have not been, this is a big step backwards, and I can't pick the right word now. I'm surprised that it even made the agenda, but it's not a step forward at all. It's not an improvement, and I urge all of you to vote in opposition to the resolution. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. I'm talking for 38,000 people in this 4-county area.
Thank you, Dave. I'll give this copy of your letter to the clerk to enter into the record.
Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have any questions for Mr. Calvert? Commissioner Peter John?
Yes. Let me walk through a couple things because you mentioned there were 8 provisions and that 4 didn't change anything, but your letter, I think, cited, I'm looking through here trying to make sure, I think you cited 4 or 5, at least 4 and maybe 5 different
There are 4 above my signature and 4 below my signature.
Well, I wanted to make sure, when you said 4 really weren't kind of off the table here, which ones fell into which category and which of the 4 fell in?
The ones that will be affected by this resolution are the ones relating to the exclusion of churches and private clubs, the one relating to to shortening the bar area from 60 inches down to 36 inches, which is what the resolution would do. The one eliminating universal parking, which is an 11-foot wide parking space with a 5-foot access aisle, and the one eliminating unisex bathrooms.
Okay, well, I wanted to, there were a number of different sections alluded to, and it wasn't clear to me which ones fell in. Let me walk you through, just so I understand. You mentioned the history of the ADA when Congress passed it in 1992. Could you tell me about the amendments that Congress passed, did you say in 1998?
Congress didn't, the only amendment has been to the ADA, has been the ADA Amendments Act of 2008, which really applied to the definition of disability for the purpose of Title I, which relates to employment. That's where that was really effective.
Well, our provision here wouldn't impact any of that.
It doesn't impact that at all.
Okay.
So in 1990, the ADA was passed. The Attorney General was asked to draw regulations, and those regulations were first drafted by the United States Access Board, and from the Access Board they were then sent to the Department of Justice for tweaking and adoption, and then they became part of the law.
So, I mean, Congress didn't pass it. The Department of Justice did it?
Well, it's the regulatory process.
Well, I'm one of those old-fashioned, quaint folks who think under the Constitution, I think it's Article 1, the powers are with the Congress to make law. It's not with the bureaucracy, but okay, I'm listening. Okay, so Congress actually did act in 1992, and there were some changes enacted in 2008 in an area that we're not talking about here in terms of employment.
Congress
but 1998, 2004, and 2010 were basically were administrative, bureaucratic changes of some sort. Is that a fair statement?
It's fairly. The ADA was passed as law in 1990 and signed by President Bush. And the responsibility for drafting the regulations is set forth in the law. Congress said in the law, we want you to come up with the regulations, and the Department of Justice did that. They did them with ADAG in 1992, and then modified them, modernized them in 2010.
Well, I think it's important, and I appreciate the kind of the history and the background of how we got here, because obviously the Americans with Disability Act has had a profound change in a whole number of areas, and as you pointed out, there are a number of changes that have occurred that have made things more accessible to folks, regardless of whether they have what type of health problem they may be facing, whether it's mobility or vision or hearing or whatever. But I wanted to get a little bit better understanding of when you mentioned those changes, how we got here, because I'm trying to follow what Congress is doing and have a better understanding of how we got here. Those are my questions for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dave, for your comment. Wait.
Thank you.
A couple questions.
Commissioner Howell has some questions.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Calvert. Just a couple quick questions for you. You know when did Wichita adopt the ADA Plus regulations? When did that happen?
That was done before consolidation, and I think it wasn't all done at the same time, and I'm not really sure about the years that it was done.
It seems like we've lost the history on that a little bit. I've asked that question to a few folks. I have not yet got a good answer to the question, but make sure we understand this. If this resolution does not change anything, if it was not to pass, then our code requirements would require that every ADA parking space would be a 16 feet wide space. Is that
Sure.
correct? And so right now the standard is one van accessible space, which is 13 feet wide for every 6 standard spaces. Is that correct?
Oh, van accessible space now is 16
I'm sorry.
feet wide.
You're right, 16 feet. And every other ADA space is 13 feet.
Every other space is 13 feet.
Okay.
If the parking space is 8 feet. Now, that's what's required. Most places that I see, the parking spaces are really 9, 10, 11 feet anyway.
Do you know what the minimum is for a standard, not an ADA space, but just a standard space? Do you know what
Probably 8 feet, I don't know.
I looked it up yesterday. I think it's 90 inches, so it's 7.5 feet.
Okay.
And so that's what I discovered anyway. So 90 inches is a standard space, and the 96 inches is 96 inches plus a 5-foot aisle for ADA, and then 16 foot for van accessible. And that's one out of every 6 spaces, one van space.
That's correct.
At an extra 5 feet. Okay.
That's
extra
correct.
3 feet. I'm sorry, extra 3 feet. Okay. So if this was to pass, then these parking lots would if this doesn't pass, then when someone goes to restripe a parking lot, they'd have to comply with reconfiguring those parking lots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment, and that is, I do appreciate what ADA provides for our people with special needs. I think it's extremely important, and I like the fact that our country has moved in this direction, and I appreciate the fact that we are sensitive to the needs of people who have special needs, and I appreciate what ADA is trying to accomplish and all of that. But I do have a principle, and that is I like small government, and I do like to not create regulations at the local level. And really, that's I guess the underlying motivation for me to probably support this resolution today. The issue of churches, those are not businesses. Those are essentially private property, and which is why I believe they're exempted, the same as private clubs. They're not places that the broader public would necessarily access. They're considered private property, and so I think that may be why they're exempted. Can you answer one more question for me, Mr. Calvert? And that is, with the issue of the unisex bathrooms, is it one unisex bathroom for every 6 fixtures, or what's
It's
the
not
requirement?
one for every 6. The way I read it, it's if there are 6, at least there must be a unisex bathroom. So if there are 12, there must be one unisex bathroom.
And is that 6 for the total for men's and women's? There was 3 in the men, 3 for example. Is that 6 total, or is that 6 per?
You know, I
restroom?
read that, and I'm not sure which one it means, and I think you have to ask Tom how they enforce it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my thought would be it's probably 6 total, but I don't know that for a fact.
I would think so.
So again, this is one of those issues that potentially for someone to have to comply with this one would be potentially pretty expensive as well.
Well, it's only going to happen in new construction.
I understand that. I guess the bigger concern, I guess, for the issue of restriping parking lots is a pretty big deal. But Mr. Calvert, thank you for your time. I appreciate your comments today.
Yeah, I will say the issue of restriping parking lots has not created any difficulty that I'm aware of. We've never had a complaint about it. And you just got to be there, Commissioner Al, to find out what I'm talking about.
I understand. Thank you.
I got an extra wheelchair I'll loan to anybody that wants to try it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Tom? Or comments?
Yeah.
Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, it was made clear by Mr. Parnicott that this was not staff-originated recommendation, but can you tell me, in discussing the changes, has the Wichita Area Builders Associations weighed in on it? Have the trade associations weighed in on this?
On this resolution?
Yes.
The BCSA has members that you guys appoint and the city council, and some of those members belong to WABA. And so they have had input through that advisory board. I haven't taken this to the WABA body, and nor have I taken it to the trade advisory boards.
Have you had comment from them? I mean, I know we've had comment from Lonnie.
The advisory boards speak in terms of unification, and they want to do things the same. They're supportive of this merger. All trade boards, all tradespeople, all builders, all developers, all architects speak frequently about this consolidation, how they appreciate it, and they want one set of rules, and they want them to be clear, and they want them to be consistent and enforced the same every time. So they speak in generalities about that.
Okay.
We do have, I will mention, we do have in the Unified Code currently some separation between City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. There are just times where things are different in the county or different in the city, and we have bifurcated that code to some degree. Now we're trying to, over time, minimize that to where we have one unified code, and there is no delineation between codes between city and county. We're not there yet. That all answer your question?
No, I think you have answered my question, and I appreciate it. On these codes, if we do not adopt this resolution and there is legitimate reason for a waiver, I mean, a project can apply for a waiver if somebody's got a project out in a rural area and they say, hey, don't need it certain, they can apply, and I mean, does that work?
Yes. We get frequent waivers. There are circumstances which, and it doesn't have to be in the county, we get waiver requests from the city. If they can show certain areas of work where someone with special needs could not perform that capacity and that area is not open to general public, they can come in and ask for waiver for that particular area. We scrutinize those. We look at it as a board. We have Brian Kuhn, works for the City of Wichita. He's very knowledgeable at ADA, probably the second most knowledgeable person I know in ADA, following Mr. Calvert here. And we talk about that, and we decide many times to grant waivers if there's just reason to do so, and that's allowed by code.
Okay, well, this is a difficult decision for me, but I mean, I am generally very supportive and want to see the unification that you mentioned, and I know that all those professional groups and trade organizations are very much in favor of a unified system, one set of rules, evenly enforced. And we do take a great deal of, we take our advisory board seriously, or I always have, and with this advisory board, the Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board, is that the right terminology? It looks like it's pretty unanimous with all the different members who signed on to the letter presented by Mr. Calvert. They're all in favor of this unified code as it stands, and so. But I do realize that in many cases, the restrictions are, you almost call them oppressive, but I suppose that if there's a waiver process for that, then that eliminates that reasoning. So anyway, thank you. You answered my question. That's all.
Sure.
Commissioner Norton?
I'm not going to support this proposition. First of all, I think we have a mechanism for a waiver that takes care of any small amounts of this will happen. I mean, I've been a commissioner for 15 years, and I get very, 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 very few complaints about ADA regulations and what it does to business owners. The truth is, I think we have an obligation to that population in our community, just like we do to many other populations that struggle, that need help. It's tough enough, I think, to be disabled and have limitations without bifurcated regulations that a small city might have, a large city might have, a county might have, individual groups might have, businesses might have. And the more we can standardize it and push all the information through the filter of a very qualified group, which is the Access Advisory Board, makes sense. The other thing is I look forward in society. We're an aging population. We're going to have more need for accessibility and regulations that accommodate that. We have more disabled veterans coming back through the wars than ever, and we're going to have to deal with that, and they're going to be in the general population. More than that, we have more rules and regulations and thought processes and values in this country to be inclusive for people that have limitations and disabilities. It's not going to be less numbers of people, it's going to be more. And the more that we can think about that, the better we'll be as a society. So I'm really for more accessibility, more accommodation. As you do for the least of these, you do to me also. And that will always guide my decisions. So I'm not going to be supportive of this. I think we're fine just where we're at. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Thank you. Tom, if you could help me out, have the building codes that Sedgwick County has, to the best of your knowledge, and the building codes that the City of Wichita have they ever been unified to the best of your knowledge? Have they ever been the same?
Well, I don't believe so. Not the amendments. The county and the city historically have mirrored what code they adopt. In other words, they'll adopt 2006 International Business Building Code, and both entities adopt that. It's the amendments that separated city from county, and that's what had to be unified back in 2012. So to answer your question directly, yes, they have always had the same codes, or mostly always had the same codes. But as far as I know, they've never had a similarity between amendments, and that's was the challenge of 12, was to take two sets of amendments, merge them together as best legal staff could, and recognizing there are still some differences today in unified code between city and county.
Yeah, that was my recollection too, and I wanted to get that on the record because I think it's important, because we have to a degree a non-standardized system today, and to pretend that we don't, I think, is not realistic. And since there are differences between the city and the county versions, although we're basing it, like you said, on roughly the same national codes, although those keep changing every couple of years too.
We are in sync with that, though. We are now adopting national codes together.
Okay.
In one, so when I approach you in a couple of weeks about international residential code, it is going to be for city-county jurisdictions. So that piece is done. This amendment issue is still something that will come up every so often, and we should talk about them and determine whether we keep them or not. That will continue to be discussed for years.
Well, when you say amendments, I mean it's basically our local version
of
what those national codes are, and in a sense that's kind of what we have today, and that's the challenge before me. Mm-hmm. I was considering looking at a report that recently came out, looking at the cost of regulations and the cost of regulatory burdens and local mandates, because they basically said, talking about regulated business, and actually it's really, I don't know of any business in this country at this point that isn't regulated in one form or another, but looking at the mandates that are coming down at the local level on what we're facing, and the challenges in terms of predictability, uncertainty that are put in place, and also increased costs that are provided. And so my vote is focused on those issues. And having said, we've got a national framework that the Americans for Disability Act has put in place. Now, we want to provide for folks who are struggling, but if we're going to be creating extra burdens at the local level that aren't part of the law that's in place, that's not part of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we need to enter into this with our eyes wide open and being willing to understand what costs and what burdens we're going to put on our local economy. There's a lot of effort and talk about we need to create jobs, we need to strengthen our local economy. If we've got additional regulations and burdens that have been put in place, whether it's bureaucratically without any elected officials actually making a vote, or if they are cast by elected officials like we're talking about today, it should be done with full transparency in the full light of day and with the public being able to see what's going on, as opposed to we're having a situation where you've got a bureaucrat making some decision. Now, having said that, I would hope that the federal government, when they change their rules, they would do it in full compliance and have Congress act, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to delegate this to a third party and let them make the law instead of where we're at. But if we want to have a situation where we can be compassionate, but we need to have certainty, we need to have some structure that provides a basis, and I'm concerned that if we get into the business of providing our own additional rules and regulations, adding costs, adding uncertainty, I think it creates a problem for this community economically going forward. And the question is, at what point do we go beyond that, go beyond what the national rules, what the national ADA is called out by statute? So I'm very much concerned about putting additional costs in place, and we've got a challenge today. We've got two committees, basically, that are pretty much on both sides of this issue in terms of where we're at. And we've got to make a decision going forward in terms of, should we put some additional local rules in place? And if so, where's the limit? How much would be enough? And that's frankly where I'm struggling with things at the moment, because I think we are a very compassionate community. We do a lot of things to help the folks who are struggling, and I think that's going to continue regardless of the way this vote comes out today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the remarks of the previous speaker, but add a couple of things as well. I do think that certainty is extremely important. We need to be sensitive and compassionate, but also have certainty for our business climate and for private property owners and things like that. So I guess the idea of balance is really the key here. If we focus on one side of the equation more than the other, then things may get difficult in certain ways. But Mr. Stoltz, let me ask you one more question. If this resolution passes today, do you have the intent to I guess, present the change to Wichita and ask them potentially to consider some of the same changes over there, so we could, again, maybe be unified on these issues?
I'm going to, depending on what happens today, if it passes today, when I go to the Building Code Standards Advisory Board in the upcoming April meeting, we'll talk about that. And if they would like me to take that to 455 North Main, then I'll do that. So I'm going to get advice from the advisory board before I don't plan to do it myself. But if that's what their recommendation is, I would take it over to Wichita to consider.
So it is possible that we could get back on the same page potentially, even if we adopt this resolution today. I agree with one of the other speakers that said this is a very difficult decision. I agree. This is a tough one. It's difficult to. It might seem cold, I suppose, to adopt this resolution, but I guess I looked at ADA as being the expert. The Americans for Disabilities Act is, I think, the guideline that we need to really embrace. And I asked Mr. Calvert yesterday, is it possible to change the ADA law to recognize these changes? And I think the answer is yes. That has been amended a number of times and continues to be an option, is to amend the law, so we have consistency and clarity across the entire nation, not just in a local jurisdiction. So I guess I would look to the ADA as being the expert and to lead us down this path of balance, trying to find a way not to be an undue burden to those trying to comply with ADA, while we try to provide sensitivity and compassion towards those with special needs. So I guess I would look to ADA as being the answer, and I would encourage us to adopt their viewpoint, regardless of what that is, and as I would embrace and encourage the ADA to look at these issues specifically, and encourage them to make an amendment to that law to adopt these ideas. I think these are good ideas, but it should just come from that level, not from a local level. And anyway, I think it's all my comments, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion we would adopt the resolution today.
Second. Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, just so I'm crystal clear here, presently we are operating under the Unified Building and Trade Code as a unified document for both city and county.
Yes.
That includes these more stringent code requirements.
Correct.
And how long have we been under that?
Since fall of 2012.
Since the fall of 2012. And that was approved, or it met the satisfaction of our builder community, and the trades folks that were, and they all agreed, okay, we can live with this. This is a
Correct. And was voted on, and it was voted on by both governing bodies.
okay. And and you indicated architects, engineers also understand all this, and they're working within these guidelines.
That's correct.
So this is, our action today doesn't add to our code, it detracts from our code.
It removes.
Or reduces the requirements.
That's correct.
Okay. But our advisory board, clearly with all of its members, our Access Advisory Board is, with I don't know how many members that are listed here, are adamantly opposed to this action. So, and there is opportunities for variance, to achieve variances.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I think my vote today will be not to support this change. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Tom, I have a few questions, kind of long. So this was never a part of county code prior to 2012.
This amendment was not part of
Right.
county amendment.
Now, we talked about, this does not take away from ADA or our commitment to ADA, is that correct?
Correct.
And we say ADA plus, it might give the misperception that this is actually part of ADA, but it's not. It's an addition that we put onto it.
It's above and beyond what
Above and
ADA.
beyond the requirements of ADA. The ADA has about, I think you said over 300 pages or so, and maybe a couple thousand regulations associated.
Several regulations, yes.
Okay. And in general, when we review building codes, we make changes to it. We modify usually to make it more restrictive. We don't usually make it, I mean, we make them less restrictive is what we're generally doing. This is probably one of the only examples in which we've made it more restrictive.
That's correct.
I do get complaints about government regulations in general. ADA comes up a lot. For me, this is a matter of where do you draw the line? You can always make a justification for more rules, but right now we have the ADA, which we comply with and developers comply with, that has thousands of regulations, and we're talking about removing 8, 4 of which are basically outdated or redundant anyway, so only 4 of them have an effect. Where do you draw the line? I think I agree with Commissioner Howe. We draw the line at the ADA. They've amended it. Presumably all these things are taken into account, and they come up with the rules, and there's a couple thousand regulations, and if this motion passes today, I don't think it's accurate to say that we're no longer a community of inclusion. I mean, clearly we are. We're talking about thousands of regulations that we enforce on our community in order to improve accessibility. I think we all support that. It's a matter of where you draw the line, and I'm somewhat hesitant to add more regulations on beyond what's already been recommended by ADA. So, Commissioner Howe.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question for Mr. Calvert, and you can just give me yes, no from there. But if I understand correctly, I read some of this yesterday, and I believe that under the law, it does allow local jurisdictions to add or subtract from ADA. Is that correct?
No, sir. It allows local jurisdictions to add to the ADA.
More regulations, more restrictions only, or more things are more creates more access.
When you say more, it allows a change. For example, a change from a 36-inch wide space at the bar to 60-inch wide space at the bar. It would not permit you to change 36-inch to a 24-inch.
Okay. Yeah, I read somewhere, I think yesterday, that again these are some places called guidelines and some places called a law, but nevertheless, I read that basically that local jurisdictions can certainly add to that to create more access for people with special needs. And I thought I read that they also sometimes have the authority to also do takeaway. But let me just be very clear here. This resolution today is not recommending or doing anything that's less than what ADA requires. We are embracing ADA and everything that it stands for. Again, I believe it strikes the balance that we need to embrace, and I do that today. I embrace the ADA guidelines and law that creates compassion and sensitivity for those with special needs. But I'm not asking we would detract or go less than those guidelines in that law. So I just want to be very clear that we're not asking for us to do something that's less than what ADA is asking us to do. We're embracing it today, and I think that's the point.
If that's a question, the observation I have is that this board does not have the authority to refuse to recognize the ADA. You don't have a choice about that. This board does have a choice about these 4 different areas that I've discussed, and it is that choice that I intended to direct my comments to. There are no proposals to increase or to have any other amendments. Mission accomplished if we managed to save these 4 that provide additional. Too late. It would be, mission accomplished if we are able to save these 4 significant provisions. We don't propose any others, and I think any others would necessarily come before this board.
Anyway, just to summarize and clarify, I want to be very clear that I am embracing ADA. I love what they're doing in our community, providing that balance. And I guess I would look to them to continue to guide us, and I'd encourage you to continue to work with people at the national level to make changes, and I would certainly support that effort. I think this is a great idea. I just really think that it works better coming from that standard rather than from local government. But nevertheless, I just want to be very clear that we are embracing and complying with ADA as much as is required, and it's with compassion and sensitivity that we do so. Thank you.
I would be surprised to hear you suggest that what we need is more federal regulation and less local regulation. But
go ahead.
Tom, just to clarify, there's 2 boards you took this before. One voted in support of, one voted against it.
Correct, sir.
That's correct. Okay. I would argue that by approving this amendment, we're actually adhering more closely to ADA than what we were previously. But Commissioner Peter John?
Mr. Chairman, I'd agree with you that if this proposal passes, we will be adhering more closely to the ADA and less so. Having said that, the federal government's involved. They're regulating this. That's not a question before us today. That entity is going to be there, and unfortunately, from the history that Mr. Calvert's provided to us, it appears that when the bureaucracy, whether it's in the Justice Department or somewhere else, comes up with new rules, then the law will be changed, which isn't the way I understood government was supposed to operate. I thought elected officials passed laws, and then the governor or the president signed them into law or vetoed them, and they became law without their signature. So if this resolution passes and there's 3 votes for it today, we will be in full compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. What we won't be is in terms of going beyond where the act is at this point in time. And the concern I have in terms of creating regulatory uncertainty and putting new regulations in place is one of the reasons why I plan to be supportive of this measure today. This issue has already been, in effect, nationalized, and for us to go beyond it, I think, creates the uncertainty, confusion, and additional costs that I've seen reports, and I've got one here in front of me in terms of regulation, the regulatory environment, and the regulatory state that we're in. It causes problems, and why our economy continues to struggle, and why that's a problem that continues to get talked about, just like the issue before us today. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second.
We do.
Seeing no other comment, Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh?
No.
Commissioner Norton?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn,
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. Motion passes 3-2. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item J, Memorandum of Understanding regarding the Wichita-Sedgwick County Exploited and Missing Child Unit.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Colonel Powell, Richard Powell with the Sheriff's Office. Brought before you this morning 2 different items for your review and consideration, both of those dealing with the Exploited and Missing Children's Unit. As you recall, and as contained in the packets which you have, the supporting information, the Exploited Missing Children's Unit is a partnership between ourselves, the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office, the Wichita Police Department, and the Department of Children and Families, formerly known as SRS, several years ago. In your packet, the first item we're going to discuss today is the Memorandum of Understanding that defines the staffing tables, the functionality, and the duties of the Exploited and Missing Children's Unit. It's our recommendation today that you do approve the MOU as submitted. We have had this unit for quite some time now as a joint operation between the 3 entities. In giving you some historical information just over the last year, I had the staff there prepare some statistics for me, and we can see that the stats go clear back to 2009, but really just important to focus, I think, as all of you are aware, on our continual growth in caseload at the Exploited Missing Children's Unit, which also underneath its wings has the ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children's Unit also. EMCU, just between 2013 and 2014, noticed a 10% increase in sex crimes cases against children. Those sex crimes, the biggest categories that they saw the most growth in were aggravated indecent liberties against children and sexual exploitation of children. Under the abuse and endangered child cases, we saw a continual increase that's actually went up every single year since my report goes back 6 years, since 2009. And we started off in 2009 with around 550 cases of abuse or endangerment to children, and we finished up the year 2014 with 750, a significant increase. Again, it's went up every year for 6 years. And of course, as part of the EMC unit and the level of expertise and the quality of personnel, we do assist a lot of outside entities also in investigations. And we've noticed a continual increase of our outside investigation cooperation with other outside agencies. I thought I'd give you a couple representative cases of some things that we've come across just in the last year to show the circumstances of what we find when we investigate these children cases that end up involving law enforcement. I had just randomly picked out a couple cases that occurred last year, and I'll just give you a really quick synopsis to give you an idea of the things that we have to look at and investigate. In 2014, the EMC unit responded to a case where a registered sex offender was caught looking at a 5-year-old female victim with her pants and underwear pulled down. Detectives interviewed the victim, who disclosed the suspect had sexually assaulted her and forced her to perform sexual acts on him. The suspect was interviewed by detectives, was arrested, and booked into jail. The case was presented to the district attorney's office, who charged the individual with 2 counts of aggravated indecent liberties. The suspect was found guilty in the Sedgwick County District Court earlier this year and is currently facing 40 years of confinement for his crimes against young children. Another case we pulled up, again last year, detectives and DCF social workers received a call from a school counselor about a young juvenile victim who said she was afraid to go home because of her uncle, who also lived in that same house. In talking to the victim, it was obvious that there was a clear indicator there were some things going on that were not right. Officers were sent to the home where they located 5 small girls, all under the age of 8, in the residence. All the young girls were transported to the EMC unit, where 4 of the girls disclosed sexual abuse of some kind by the uncle over the period in the last 3 years. The 5th of the young girls was less than age 3 and was unable to effectively communicate with the detectives at that time. The uncle was located by detectives, transported to EMCU, where he was interviewed. He was then booked and charged by the district attorney's office with 1 count of rape, 1 count of aggravated indecent liberties, 4 counts of aggravated criminal sodomy. He pled guilty to all the charges earlier this year. These are the type of cases, these are the types of crimes that EMCU is charged with the responsibility of following up on, investigating, and prosecuting people with the assistance of course, the district attorney's office and other governmental agencies. Again, the MOU you have in front of you right now simply defines everybody's part in the organization. You should have all the content, I believe, in your packet. I would stand for any questions you may have, but again, recommend your approval of the document as submitted.
Now, Chief Powell, I've looked through this. There's really no substantive changes to...
No, sir. This is simply a renewal of an agreement we've had in place since 2010. It's just an ongoing agreement.
Thank you. Commissioner Peter John?
Well, a quick question, because on page 6 of the interlocal agreement, or the memorandum of understanding, let me get this, try and get that right.
Okay.
It talks about it will be located at the State Office Building, 130 South Market, B050. Does this lock us into that location for the duration of this agreement, or you all have the flexibility of being able to relocate? As I understand, that's being moved, isn't it?
Right. I know there's a plan. I can't speak specifically of all the details, but I know some state offices are going to be relocating from that building to another location in the city. Now, currently, right now, the EMC unit, as we see it today in its current configuration, will remain in that building as we understand it until such time as the Child Advocacy Center comes online. And once that comes online, the expectation is that EMCU will relocate from the state office building there on South Market over to the new CAC at Lincoln and Topeka Streets.
I just wanted to make sure if this was going to lock us into that location.
No, sir.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, what's the will of the board?
I move we approve the memorandum of understanding and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item K, amendment of a contract with the Kansas Department for Children and Families to fund 1/3 of the cost of operations of the Exploited and Missing Child Unit for calendar year 2015.
Good morning again, Commissioners and Mr. Chairman. This is just a separate agreement that has dovetails back into the one we just discussed. This is a separate agreement with the Department of Children and Families with the state of Kansas that just simply provides for them to apply to provide for their 1/3 share of funding of the EMC unit. Again, this is no change from the previous agreements we've had in place since 2010. It does not require any change of budgetary authority or expenses. It simply allows them to contribute as a part of the agreement their 1/3 of the operating expenses of the organization. I would again recommend your approval of the document, and we'll stand for any questions.
Yeah, Chief, now the budget has increased from 91 to 169.
Yes, sir.
Well, what's about 77,000? What's that account for?
I know we've had increased. We added on another support person in that particular organization, and then just I believe most of that beyond that was operating costs, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, what's the will of the board?
I move we take the recommended action.
Second.
Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item L, presentation of the 2014 Comprehensive Annual Report. Financial report.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Chris Cronus, your Chief Financial Officer, and I am very pleased to be here today to formally present our comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year that ended December the 31st, of 2014. This financial report and the county's financial activities during 2014 have been audited by the firm of Allen Gibson Hulick, and following my presentation, Shelley Hammond, a partner with Allen Gibson Hulick, who led the audit, will come up and give you the results of their audit of our finances. We place a great value on transparency, and this financial report goes a long way towards providing information in a very transparent fashion about county financial activity. But the value of transparency is greatly diminished if the information being presented is not timely. We are presenting this comprehensive annual financial report to you 90 days after the end of the fiscal year that is being reported. There probably is a government or two in the country that deliver comprehensive annual financial reports quicker than 90 days, but I'm not aware of them. That we are able to do so is a tribute to the good efforts of the people who put this report together. That effort was led by Sarah Jantz, who is the county's accounting director, under the supervision of Rick Durham, the deputy CFO. As always, I'm just the pretty face up here taking credit for their work.
Okay. It's April Fool's.
We're going to spend some time this morning talking about some of the information that's contained in the comprehensive annual financial report. There are a variety of ways that we can look at public accounting information. First, we're going to talk about measures that identify the county's near-term financing capabilities. And to do that, we're going to be talking about data that is contained in the traditional fund statements that you're accustomed to seeing in governmental accounting. Following that, we will spend some time talking about the county's overall financial position, our longer-term ability to fund county operations. And to do that, we will be talking about information that's contained in the entity-wide statements. These are statements that are developed on a full accrual basis and are the closest thing in public accounting to what you might be accustomed to seeing in the private sector with corporation accounting. And finally, we will spend some time talking about long-term trends. There is a section in the comprehensive annual financial report that is called statistics, and it generally provides 10 years of data on key pieces of information, and we'll examine some of that data to give you a sense of where the county has been and where it's headed, and talk about what the implications of that might be. And finally, we will talk about county services, because whereas in the private sector, the primary goal of accounting is to record and report the degree to which the business was successful in generating profit, since that's the primary goal of the business. In the public sector, we have different objectives. We certainly have economic goals, but more than that, government exists to provide services to a constituency. And so we will spend some time talking about our success or lack thereof in providing services. So we'll begin with traditional fund statements. And what you'll see on this chart is an illustration of the total fund balance of the county's governmental funds for the past 5 years. The chart is segmented according to the fund or fund type in which the fund balance is contained. So what you see on this chart is that in 2014, at the far right of the chart, total fund balances of the county's governmental funds were $236.5 million. You can see that that is a substantial increase over the 2013 fund balance of $164.6 million. That increase is largely attributable to bonds that the county sold during 2014 to finance improvements at the Wichita State University Innovation Campus, and refunding bonds that the county sold to obtain debt service savings on debt that the county had issued some years previously. Looking down the chart, you can see in the green segment at the very bottom the general fund balance, which has been essentially constant over this 5-year period, but in 2014 it grew nearly $2 million to $68.6 million. The light gray segment is the source of the largest increase. That is captioned as all other funds, and what's going on there is that we are recording the impact of those bond issues that were sold by the PBC for Wichita State University. Now turning just to the general fund balance, again, in 2014, we ended the year with $68.6 million of fund balance, an increase of nearly $2 million from the prior year. What you can see on this chart are the components of general fund balance each year for the past 5 years. Starting from the bottom, the dark red color is non-spendable fund balance. That is net equity, if you will, of the general fund, which is tied up and can't be spent. And in this case, it is primarily the amounts that we are owed by the Sedgwick County Fire District and the Sedgwick County Zoological Society for loans that the county provided to those two entities in prior years and that are being repaid over a period of time. The bright green segment, $5.3 million in 2014, represents committed fund balance. And that is the amount of the county's fund balance that the commission committed to the Zoological Society late in 2014 as a contribution for the elephant barn that is being constructed as a part of the new elephant exhibit. That money now has been paid to the zoo, but as of the end of 2014, it had not yet been paid, and so it was a commitment of county fund balance. The light gray segment represents assigned fund balances, $15.5 million in 2014, up from $12.6 million the prior year. That represents the portion of fund balance that management has designated a use for in the subsequent year budget. As you know, each year we budget a substantial amount of contingencies in the general fund that we don't expect to spend, but we need to have that budget authority available in case a crisis should arise. And because we don't expect to spend those contingencies, we don't want to levy current property taxes to fund them. So we fund them with fund balance. That is that $15.5 million. And finally, the light green at the very top of the bar represents unassigned fund balance, $38.2 million in 2014, a decrease from $47.2 million in the prior year. Unassigned fund balance is, in essence, all fund balances that don't fall in the bottom segments. It's what's left over. And that is the portion of fund balance over which, at least in theory, we have complete discretion. You have the ability to use that portion of the fund balance in any manner that you might choose. So we have $68.6 million of fund balance. We have $38.2 million of unassigned fund balance, and we have $15 million of assigned fund balance. The sum of assigned and unassigned represents unrestricted fund balance. And you have adopted a policy, a fund balance policy, that says that at any point in time, the general fund unrestricted fund balance should be at least equal to 20% of budgeted expenditures and transfers out in the general fund. What you see on this table is the calculation that shows you that we have complied with that policy restriction, our policy threshold, as of December the 31st of 2014. Our unrestricted fund balance, the sum of assigned and unassigned, was $53,765,000. Our current year, 2015, budget is $196 million in the general fund. 20% of $196 million, the minimum target set in policy, is $39,212,000. Our actual fund balance, unrestricted fund balance of $53,765,000, is 27.4% of the budget, and the amount by which we exceed the minimum threshold in the policy is $14,553,000. Now, there are several ways of looking at the solvency of the government. And when we're talking about the fund statements, the near-term financing capabilities, the way we do that, the way we examine solvency, is by looking at the budget. Is the budget solvent? Are we generating enough revenue to pay our bills on a year-by-year basis? What you see on this chart is a line graph that indicates for 10 years the county's governmental fund revenues divided by governmental fund expenditures. And a ratio of 100% or more indicates that we have generated more revenue than we had in expenditure. A ratio of less than 100% indicates that our revenues did not match our expenditures. What you see on the slide is that since 2009, the ratio has been less than 100%. It has been, in the past 4 years, roughly 96 or 97%, and that's where we ended 2014. That's looking at all activity of the government, and that includes the activity that is involved in capital finance. So what we're including here are expenditures for debt service and capital projects and things of that sort that really are non-recurring. Operating solvency is another way of looking at the fund statements and determining the degree of quality in the county's financial system. What we're looking at with operating solvency is the governmental revenues divided by expenditures excluding those for capital projects. So we're excluding here the Public Building Commission expenditures and revenues, debt service and debt proceeds funds revenues and expenditures. Again, you see that we are a little bit below 100%. That is, our revenues were not quite sufficient to cover all of our expenditures on a year-by-year basis for the past several years. But we're in a little bit better shape than when we look at the overall financial activity. Here, the ratio at 2014 was about 97%, down from 99% in 2013. Another measure of success in governmental finance is the degree of flexibility that you have over county finances. To what extent are is the money that you have available to spend locked up on prior commitments? And so what you're looking at here is the total principal and interest on long-term debt as a percentage of total county expenditures. It is, as of 2014, about 6.75%. About 6.75% of all expenditures took the form of debt service in 2014. That is down from a little over 8% in 2013, but you can see over the 10-year period it's consistently been between 6 and 7%, with the exception of 2013. That suggests that we have a good deal of flexibility in how we choose to allocate resources for government spending. Another measure that we look at is liquidity. To what extent do we have trouble paying our bills over the short term? So what we're looking at here are cash and investments divided by liabilities. And you can see that while it's declining, as of the end of 2014, we had about $6 of cash on hand for every dollar of liability that we had. that is an extremely good liquidity position. It was much better earlier in this 10-year cycle because, you'll recall, at that time we had collected a whole bunch of arena sales tax that was dedicated for that single project but hadn't yet been entirely used for that project. And so our cash was abnormally high, and as a result, our liquidity was abnormally high. Another measure that we look at is the extent to which we choose to fund or have the ability to fund our government with resources that are provided by others. What we're looking at here are total intergovernmental revenues as a percentage of all revenue. In 2014, intergovernmental revenue amounted to a little bit more than 14% of all the revenue that we had. It has been fairly constant over the past 10 years, but it's on a very slight downward trajectory as the state and the federal governments have reduced the amounts of money that they provide in the form of grants or other monies to pay for our programs. You see that we've become less reliant on those sources to fund the government. So now we're going to move into the entity-wide statements and change our focus. We're going to be talking now not about the county's near-term financing ability, but rather about, over the long term, what do our finances look like. We begin by looking at this table showing the composition of the county's net position, and my goodness, we've got a mess up on that pie chart. And I apologize for that. The net assets for 2014, as indicated on the bar chart on the left, were $620.3 million as of December 31st. That is an increase of a little over $5 million from the prior year. What you can see looking at the bars are the components of the net position. The bright green that represents the largest segment represents the amount of our capital assets that we have net of debt. So that's facilities and roads and things of that sort. The blue segment in the middle, $69.2 million in 2014, represents restricted net assets. And that is a little bit up from the prior year. And the light blue at the top of the chart shows the unrestricted net assets, $85.2 million at the end of 2014, down from $89.3 million a year earlier. The pie chart that makes absolutely no sense is supposed to indicate the nature of the restrictions on our net position. And I've given you a copy of this that I hope has the labels as it's supposed to, but I will tell you that the green segment on the pie chart, the largest segment, represents assets that are restricted for capital improvements. The blue at the bottom represents assets that are restricted for debt service, and the light gray on the bottom left represents assets that are restricted for grants. So essentially, 2/3 of our restricted net assets are restricted for capital projects, the debt that financed capital projects, or grants that we receive to provide some specific service. So we look at a series of measures in the entity-wide statements to determine our degree of success. A key measure is the change in net position. By what percentage, up or down, did net position change? Obviously, we want net position to grow. And you can see for 2005 through 2009, it grew at a healthy percent. Again, that is because during that period of time, we were collecting the arena sales tax and building that new $190 million facility. When the economic downturn hit in 2008, there was a lag from the time the local economy started suffering to the time that suffering reflected in Sedgwick County finances. And you can see, starting in 2010, Sedgwick County's net position decreased. And it has decreased for the past 4 years, although by smaller percentages each year as we recovered, until 2014, when once again we increased our net position by a very small percentage. You'll recall that it was just a little over $5 million. This chart shows why the net position changed by $5 million. When we look at entity-wide statements, we're looking both at governmental activity and the county's business type activities, which in our case represents the activity of Intrust Bank Arena. So what you see on this chart on the far left is the beginning net position, the net position of Sedgwick County at January 1st, 2014. We had a total of $615 million of net assets, comprised of $441 million of governmental assets and $174 million of business-type assets, the arena. During the course of the year, we collected a total of just under $325 million. $324 million of that was for governmental activities, and $600,000, 0.6 million, was for the arena. We spent almost $320 million, $314 million for governmental activities, and $5.6 million for the arena. And for the benefit of Commissioner Peterjohn, before he asks the question, I'll point out that of that $5.6 million of arena financial activity expenditure, or expense, $5.2 million was depreciation on the arena. And so when we take the beginning fund balance, add the revenue, subtract the expense, we arrive at the ending net position, or ending fund balances. $451 million of governmental activities, $169 million for business-type activities, a total of $620.3 million. When we look at the various activities of the government, one of the things that we want to know as financial managers is to what extent does that activity pay its own way? Or conversely, to what extent are we required to use tax revenue, general county revenues, to support that activity? What you see on this chart indicates for each activity of the government, each function of the government, the answer to that question. The light green represents the program activity for each, the program revenue for each activity. The blue represents the tax support, the general revenue support for the activity. The sum of the two represents the total expenditure of the activity. So what does this slide show? Well, it shows that far and away the largest category of expense in county government is public safety. And we spend just under $140 million on public safety activities. Of that $140 million, $97.2 million, or 71% of the total, comes from county taxes, general revenues. And the balance, about $40 million, comes from program revenues. And in the case of public safety, that means ambulance fees, municipal jail fees, offender registration fees, and the like that we collect from customers or consumers, if that's the right word, in the public safety system. The activity of government that comes the closest to paying its own way is health and welfare. You can see from this chart that we spend almost $60 million on health and welfare. It's the second largest activity of the government. And of that almost $60 million, only $12 million, 21%, was required to come from general tax revenue of the county. The balance, more than $40 million, came from program revenues, which in this case is consumer fees, Medicaid, and grants that we collect to support those activities. So when we look at the entity-wide statements, at the long-term financial position, solvency takes on a different form. What we're looking at to determine the government's long-term solvency is our net position divided by net assets. In this case, what we're looking at is a measure that indicates the extent to which we have complete control over our assets. And a high ratio is good. So we see here that we have been consistently above 50% on that ratio for the past 10 years. It declined by what looks like a sharp decline, but in fact was only from 56% to 52% in 2014. That, again, is the function of the bonds that we sold for the WSU Innovation Campus. Another way of looking at solvency in these statements is to look at liabilities divided by total assets. And this indicates our ability to pay off our long-term debt. And here we want the opposite of what we saw in the prior chart, where there a high ratio is good, here a low ratio is good. And you see that we have consistently had long-term liabilities represent only about 20% of the total county assets, meaning that we don't have a very extensive amount of debt behind our assets. So now we turn into the statistical section, and we're looking at this information to get a sense of the trends that are affecting county finances, and also county government, for that matter, county services. So this first chart shows governmental revenue and governmental expenses for 10 years. The green is revenue, the blue is expense, and what you want to see, obviously, above the blue, higher than the blue. In most years, that has been the case. During the economic downturn, 2010 through 2012, that was not the case. Our expenses, our governmental expenses, exceeded our governmental revenues as we were drawing down fund balances to provide services during a period when revenues were dropping and demand for services because of the hard economy were increasing. We ended the year with $324.3 million of revenue and $314 million of expense. The expense increased about $66 million over 10 years. In 2005, it was $248 million. This chart shows where that increase took place by activity of government. And this is a good indication of where the Commission's priorities have been over the past years. So total expenses of the government for governmental activities increased about $66 million. $46.5 million of that increase was public safety, $16 million was public works, and you can see that general government activities and health and welfare activities actually decreased over that 10-year period. In 2014, we spent less money on health and welfare and general government than we did 10 years previously. What we're showing on this chart is the relationship between program revenue, the self-generated income of the various activities that I described earlier, and the county property tax. What you see is that program income has dropped fairly sharply since 2008 and 9. Once the economic downturn hit and the federal government started cutting back on grant activity and the state government ran into budgetary problems and started cutting back on some of the payments that they make, we received substantially less program income than we had been accustomed to receiving. That gap, that shortfall of revenue, that drop-off of revenue from program sources was made up by property taxes. And so what you see is that property taxes have been fairly constant during that same period of time. The problem with this chart is not just that program income has declined, it is also that property tax revenue has not increased to make up the loss. As of 2014, we collected $157.7 million of property tax. That is virtually identical to the amount of property tax that we collected in 2009, 6 years previously. So during that 6-year period, you can see the drop that took place in program income. We received no more property tax income, and yet the demand for county services and the costs of providing those services continued to increase. There was a fairly sharp spike in 2014 program income that you can see, up to $130.9 million. That spike is largely a function of timing of state payments. In 2014, we received affordable airfare from the state that we should have received in 2013. And in addition, we received affordable airfare money in 2014 that was owed to us in 2014. So essentially, we received 2 years of that funding source in a single year, and that's what caused that spike to occur. So since property tax is so important to us, and it's becoming more important as program income has declined, we want to pay close attention to our success in collecting that revenue. And so you see the collection rates over the past 10 years here. They have consistently been what I would characterize as good, above 95%. What we're looking at here is the percentage of current year levy collected in the year. So for what is labeled here 2013, that's the 2013 tax year that funded the county's 2014 budget, we collected 96.8% of the taxes that were levied for that year. That is about the high point over the past 10 years, and it represents a pretty dramatic recovery from the low periods that we suffered during the economic downturn when people were having trouble paying their property tax bills. The final financial chart that I want to show you is the county's total outstanding debt. And what you have on this chart is a series of bars, one per year, showing the amount of debt that the county had outstanding at the end of each year, and the bars are segmented according to the type of debt. The green at the bottom represents general obligation debt sold by Sedgwick County and backed by county property taxes. In 2014, that amounted to $67 million, which was a lower number than at any time during this 10-year period, and as a point of interest, is a lower amount than any time in a long time before that 20-year period, before that 10-year period. We are at a historic low point in outstanding general obligation debt. The blue segment, the small blue segment, represents special assessment debt, $3.3 million at the end of 2014. That is a decrease. It has been decreasing pretty steadily over the 10 years, as you can see, and that's because simply we haven't been doing nearly as many special assessment projects as we used to do. 10 years ago, we had a much higher level of debt that had been sold previously to pay for expansion of what then was the county sewer system. In 2000, the county sold its sewer system to the city of Wichita. And so since then, we've been paying off the debt that had been issued prior to that point, but we haven't been issuing any new debt of that type. The dark red segment shows debt issued by the PBC. At 2014, we ended the year with $153.8 million of outstanding PBC debt, and you can see that that's a substantial increase over the prior year. That increase is attributable to two factors. First, as you know, in 2014, we sold bonds for the benefit of WSU to fund a building on the Innovation Campus. We, being the Public Building Commission, sold those bonds. those bonds will be repaid solely with the proceeds of grants collected by Wichita State and the proceeds of the special property tax levy that is imposed for Wichita State. It is not backed by a full faith and credit pledge of the Sedgwick County taxpayer. So that accounted for $45 million of the increase. Another $31 million of increase came from 2 refunding bonds that the county sold during 2014. And the nature of the the structure of the refunding was such that we are double counting debt for a couple of years, 2014 through 2017. We will be counting the original debt that now has been refunded as well as the new debt that we've sold to refund it. And so that's it's a factor, it's real, but it's misleading to think just because you're seeing a big change in the number there that the county has gone on a debt binge. So we ended the year in total with $226.7 million of debt outstanding compared to $165.1 million in the prior year. Setting aside the $78 million that is accounted for by the WSU bonds and those refunding bonds that are double counted, our total outstanding debt would be a little over $150 million at the end of 2014. So it would be down from the prior year. So I want to turn now to services because, as I said at the beginning, in governmental finance, the finance is just a tool to achieve the ability to provide service, and service is what we're about. So what has happened with county services over the past 10 years? In the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, there are a series of tables in the statistics section that provide this kind of data, and I'm going to just summarize some of it. For public safety services, in 2014, we provided responses to an average of almost 41,000 calls per month at the Emergency Communications Center, the 911 center. That was a 13% increase over a 10-year period. EMS responded to an average of a little over 5,000 cases, clients, per month in 2014, an increase of 44% over 10 years. You have spent an awful lot of time over the past 7 or 8 years working with us to find ways to reduce the population in detention, both in the jail and in the juvenile complexes. And the next 2 indicators show the degree of success that you have achieved. In 2014, the average daily juvenile population was 62, a decrease of 47% over what it had been 10 years previously. The average daily population in the custody of the sheriff was 1,359, a decrease of 11% over what it had been 10 years previously. And we provided public safety services, these and many others, with a total of 1,406 employees in 2014, virtually the same number of employees that we had 10 years previously. Looking just at the fire service, in 2014, they responded to 91 structural fires, residential structural fires, for every 100,000 residences in the fire district. That's a decrease of 70% over the prior 10 years. And to me, that's a pretty good indication of the success of fire prevention efforts that have been taking place for a long time within the fire district, as well as changes in the building codes and the like that have improved the safety of residential structures. As fires have diminished, our fire service has followed the pattern of all fire services throughout the nation and has increasingly been required to devote its attention to medical services. The fire district is the medical first responder throughout most of the land area of Sedgwick County. And in 2014, they responded to an average of 415 medical calls every month, an increase of 92% over that 10-year period. During that 10 years, the number of fire stations in the district increased by 1 to a total of 9. And I've already told you what the total number of public safety employees were. Fire is a subset of that, but just as a point of information, the number of fire district employees decreased by 2% over this 10-year period. Turning to health and welfare services. In 2014, we provided services to 12,559 clients, provided mental health services to those clients. That was an 8% increase over 10 years. There were 2,536 people in Sedgwick County who were eligible for developmental disability services, an increase of 40% over 10 years. Those services and other health and welfare services were provided with a total of 522 employees in 2014, a 4% decrease from 10 years earlier. Public health is a subset of health and welfare, and by county policy, we have attempted to reduce the extent to which we are providing direct patient services in most of the areas of public health. And what you see on these statistics is the degree to which we have accomplished that. In 2014, the number of public health clinic patient encounters, what I would, as a layperson, call an appointment, was 155,316, 7% fewer than 10 years ago. We provided 13,230 immunizations from our health department, a 52% decrease over 10 years. And we had 2,741 tuberculosis encounters, a 64% decrease. The number of health employees, which is a subset of health and welfare that I talked about previously, number of health employees in 2014 was 123, a 10% decrease from 10 years previously. We take great pride in our culture and recreation services. At Sedgwick County Zoo, in 2014, almost 528,000 people passed through the gates, a 5% increase over 10 years ago. At Sedgwick County Park, 959,000 people went through the gates, an 18% increase over 10 years ago. And we provided culture and recreation services in 2014 with 96 employees, a 72% decrease from 10 years earlier. And that decrease is largely a function of the closure of the Kansas Coliseum and our action to privatize, if you will, the operation of Intrust Bank Arena. At Intrust Bank Arena, we don't have 10 years of history, but in 2014, 100 events were provided for the citizens of Sedgwick County and South Central Kansas, and nearly 300,000 people attended those events. There's an organization called Polestar that is the professional trade organization for event management, and Polestar ranks Intrust Bank Arena 60th in the nation for attendance in 2014 among arenas. And finally, since the arena opened in 2010, SMG has returned $1,625,000 of operating surplus to Sedgwick County. Turning to public works services. In 2014, we improved 97 miles of road, a 24% increase over 10 years. We also maintained 603 miles of road, a 3% decrease, and the decrease is attributable to annexations that have taken place during that 10-year period by various cities. And finally, Public Works disposed of 576 tons of household hazardous waste, a 73% increase over a 10-year period. And Public Works provided those and other services with 116 employees, 15% fewer than they had in 2005. Finally, general governmental services. The Elections Commissioner and her staff registered almost 276,000 voters in Sedgwick County in 2014, a 20% increase over a 10-year period. The appraiser dealt with almost 213,000 real estate taxable parcels. Those form the foundation of the county's tax base. That was a 5% increase over a 10-year period. The Register of Deeds processed almost 70,000 documents, a 33% decrease over 10 years, that decrease resulting from changes in state law that have determined what form documents that have to be registered take and how many pages they consume. And the county clerk processed 64,450 real estate records, a 1% decrease. And all general government services were provided with 422 employees, a 6% decrease from 10 years previously. That concludes the formal part of the presentation. I guess I would wrap up by trying to answer what those of us who were here when she served on the commission, we understand as Betsy Gwynn's so what question. What does all this mean? Well, the conclusions that I draw from this is that Sedgwick County is in very sound financial condition. We have a substantial amount of net assets, and those net assets are not highly leveraged. We have extremely good liquidity. The liquidity has been dropping over the past number of years, but that drop is largely a function of the unusual circumstance of the limited term arena sales tax that we were collecting during the first few years of the 10-year period we looked at. We have a low level of restriction on your ability to direct resources to your priorities. Less than 8% of all expenditures are committed to debt service. That means that you have considerable control over how you choose to allocate resources. We have a minor, what I would characterize as a minor but persistent structural imbalance between revenues and expenditures. And we have known about that, and we need to deal with it, and we are dealing with it. We have an increasing reliance on taxes to fund the government. We rely on people to pay general revenues to us rather than to pay directly for the services that they receive. And finally, looking at the 10-year trends, it's very clear that our focus, your focus, over that 10-year period has been to increase efforts in public safety and public works and to decrease activity and expenditure in health and welfare and general government. And further, it's been your focus, and we have succeeded in reducing county employment in all areas of the government over that 10-year period. So with that summary, I would be happy to try and answer any questions about the comprehensive annual financial report if you have them. If you don't have any questions, then I would ask Shelley Hammond to step up to the podium and talk to you about the audit that Allen Gibson Hulick has conducted on our statements.
Commissioner Peter John.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, appreciate the report, and I agree with you. It's on the whole, Sedgwick County's in good financial shape, and I think the public would take that. On page 16, slide 16 of your presentation, where you were at talking about expenses, and you had a 5.58 expense for business type activity that would be the arena.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say, Chris, that including depreciation, that's kind of how the if we were looking at the arena as a business, that would be kind of the loss that was occurred in 2014 for the operation of the arena in terms of expenses
Yes.
over revenue?
Yes.
Okay, because we've had a lot of discussions and presentations, and sometimes we get checks here, and the arena is obviously very important, and they've had some great events, including one last night. But if you include depreciation and you're looking at it as a business, that's a significant figure, and I appreciate you kind of providing that to us. I jump to slide 23, I think it is. And you're showing on that slide on 23, in terms of property tax revenue, so that almost $158 million in 2014. So if the public out there wanted to get an idea of how much 1 mil would generate, if I take that almost $158 million divided by the county's mill levy, would that give me a good ballpark number?
No, it actually wouldn't, because property tax consists of more than just that. It also includes motor vehicle taxes and other similar ad valorem taxes. So the county's property tax levy, the one that you're talking about, was more on the order of $130 million, I believe, of this total.
So the automotive, the car tax part of it, depending upon how you define property tax, and here we're using it all together. But if you're looking at just the property ad valorem portion, it's a significantly smaller figure.
Yes.
Okay, because I think that's important when we talked about all property taxes, differentiating there in terms of what we had. Like I said, overall, in the report, I appreciate very much the clarification in terms of debt. There's been some talk about trying to get our county, reduce our county debt, and obviously, if you just look at the gross numbers, it's increasing, but with the understanding that we've done some refunding to take advantage of low interest rates, and the commitment that this commission made to Wichita State University in funding the Innovation Campus and providing the financial backstop for that, that kind of explains why that number seems to be going in the opposite direction. And I think that's important to get on the record in any discussion we have for the county's indebtedness. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make the motion that we receive and file this report. Like I said, it is a really good set of numbers.
I'll second that motion. Chris, could you go back to slide 6?
Sure. And if I might, before you make the motion, I would ask that you hear from Shelley Hammond with the results of the audit.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to. Well, I assume that.
Unless you want to take two separate actions.
We could bring the audit up separately, but
that's fine. Okay. Slide 6, you said.
Yeah. Now on the, we have a $10 million rainy day fund.
Yes.
Which is a contingency, right? Mm-hmm. Where does that fall in the graph there?
Well, it would be funded with the $15.5 million that is assigned fund balance, but there's not a direct dollar-for-dollar correlation. What you're looking at here is fund balance, equity in the general fund. The rainy day fund is an appropriation of these assets.
Okay, but how do you get to the 15.5 then? Or is that a discussion we can have?
Well, it is a discussion. It's a discussion that we have had, and sometime in the recent past, and I don't recall exactly when or exactly what it said, one of you asked for a reconciliation of that very question, and I sent it to you.
Okay.
So I can dig that out and resend it if you'd like.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to have a couple comments about several slides. I guess I'd like to have your confirmation. Going to slide number 8. I'll go to a couple more with a similar thought. But slide number 8, would you, let's see if I understand this correctly. We've been below solvent since 2007. Or sorry, since 2008, I guess. Is that correct? It's been less than 100% since 2008?
Starting in 2009, yes.
Okay, yes. Starting in 2009?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a good condition to be in. We need to probably address that at some point. And going to slide number 9, same thing. Okay, so there we are basically below 100% since 2000 and starting in 2010. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then go to slide 11, please. Would you characterize this slide as trending in the wrong direction? I mean, this is a near-term financing we're less flexible than we were before. So it was better in 2013 and it's worse in 2014. Is that what I'm reading correctly?
No, it's just the opposite.
Just the opposite. We're
Yeah.
better conditioned on
Yeah.
this slide.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
low percentage would be good.
Actually-
But having said that, any of these percentages that you see on this chart are by normal standards low.
I'm just looking at the trend. So
Yeah,
we're in a
you're
better-
absolutely right.
We're in
Yeah.
a better position, you're saying, in 2014
Than
what?
13, yes.
Okay, what about slide 11? Can you characterize that one? Are we in a better position on slide 11 or worse? The trending, so 2014 is a lower number on the slide.
2014 is a lower number, and looking just at the chart, that would suggest that we are a little bit worse.
A little bit worse.
We have $6 for every dollar of liability instead of $10 for every dollar of liability. The reason for that is the long-term liability that we have taken on for those two debt issues that I mentioned.
So like in slide 18, if you zip forward to slide 18, it would be the same explanation, but basically, again, going in the wrong
Yes.
direction perhaps if you want to look at it,
Yeah.
but it's explainable.
Yes.
All right, then what about slide 19? Are we less solvent than we were? I'm trying to understand the slide, so is this a less?
It's the same consideration once again.
Okay.
The increase, to answer your question, yes, this would suggest that we have less ability to pay off long-term debt in 2014 than we've had in prior years.
Okay.
The reason for that, the explanation, once again, are those two
Yeah, I
bond
understand.
issues.
That's fine. And then slide 23, can we look at the last two data points on slide 23? Okay, so you said we got some late payments and that kind of changed the direction of that thing. If you look at 2013 and 2014 together and average those together, is the money from the state trending upwards from 2012 overall? In other words, if I took 2013 and 14 and averaged them together, would that be above what we got in 2012?
I don't know.
It'd be kind of in the middle of
it would
about
be pretty close, it looks
125.
like, yeah.
Yeah. So you characterize this, you said that we're getting
Again,
less?
this is not just money that we receive from the state. This is all program revenue. So it's grants that we receive from the state, it's user fees that we collect from consumers or their insurers, it's money that we receive from the federal government, money that we receive from other entities. For example, when Public Works does a road for the city of Clearwater, and city of Clearwater reimburses us for some of that, that goes in here. So it's more than just state revenue, but that's a big part of it, yes.
But trying to characterize the slide, we're not really seeing a shortfall in that type of revenue. It's actually, if you look at those 2 years together, it's overall, it's trending upwards with the explanation that you gave us about the late payments.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have maybe just a couple more quick ones. Looking at slide number, actually, I guess it's the first one of the service slides. I don't know the slide number, but
Public safety?
yes. So the average daily population, juvenile population in detention is 62.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include the population that's outside of our county currently? I mean, we know it started in the middle of 2014.
It includes the population that's in our custody, no matter where they are. But, and I guess there's, the answer to your question, I think, is yes and no. There are some juveniles who may be housed outside the county but are in the custody of our corrections department. They would be included in this. I think you're talking about juveniles who reside in Sedgwick County but are sentenced to a facility outside of Sedgwick County, and they are typically in the custody of that facility. They would not be included.
So would
in
not
this
be
count.
included in this. So again, if I wanted to understand how many of our Sedgwick County juvenile population, what that number might be today, it actually might be a little bit higher than the 62. Could be, if you counted them, it'd be, I understand it's about, the number I received recently was about 30 of our Sedgwick County youth are stationed outside of our county. So I guess I want to take that into account on this slide. I would just generally say that overall, I think that the slides describe basically what things would look like after a recession. You know, we're simply providing more services with less cost and less employees, and it's overall is a pretty impressive report. But I do see a couple of things in here that are unsustainable and certainly cause of concern. So, but thank you for the report. Thank you.
No other questions for now?
Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Shelley.
Good morning. I looked at the clock and saw that we're close to lunch, so I will try to keep my comments brief. As Chris mentioned, I am Shelley Hammond, Senior Vice President of Assurance Services with Allen Gibson Hulick. We conduct the county's annual audit, and that's what I'm here to provide you a report on. We provide to you basically 3 pieces of information, which I believe you have copies of. One of those is a page within the comprehensive annual financial report itself. There's a financial section in here that has all the financial data that Chris just went over. And the first page of that is our opinion that we provide as a result of our audit. And our opinion that we are providing is what's called an unmodified opinion. In layman's terms, that's often referred to as a clean opinion. That opinion basically says that we as your auditors, based on the tests that we performed during the course of our audit, are providing you reasonable assurance that the financial statements, this document, is free of any material misstatements. And so at the end of the day, that's usually what you want to hear from your auditors, that your auditors are providing you a clean opinion. So that's the first piece of information we provide, is the opinion on the comprehensive annual financial report. We also then provide to you as a separate letter what we call a management letter. It also has other information for you about the conduct of the audit. For example, it has information in here about if there were any changes in accounting policies that the county adopted this year. We would explain those to you so you understood them. There were none of those this year. It also walks through if there are any estimates in the financial statements, what the process is that we go through to evaluate those estimates. And so there's a brief highlighted summary of each of those in here. It also talks about if we made any adjusting entries to the financial statements. And we did have a couple of those. That's very normal and common during an audit process to have a couple adjusting entries. Both of the ones we communicated I would characterize as being kind of unique transactions. Unique and unusual transactions are often difficult to figure out how to account for. So I would not characterize those as something unusual, I guess is how I was trying to describe that. We also describe in here whether or not we've had any difficulties with management or any issues during the course of the audit process, and the answer to both of those questions was no. We did not have any difficulties, no issues arose during the course of the audit, and we just generally didn't encounter any difficulties. As we have encountered in the past, all of the people in the accounting and finance group that we work with, as well as really everywhere in the county, because we do go out to a number of different county departments throughout the course of our audit, and everywhere we have been, we've gotten great cooperation, had access to any information we needed, didn't have any issues getting information we needed. And so I also want to thank all of the folks that we encounter, especially in the accounting and finance department, for their cooperation during the audit process. The third piece of information we provide actually is not related to the comprehensive annual report. It's a separate report that we provide to you that's what we call a compliance report. It's a compliance audit that we do separately on the federal grants that the county receives. And again, our opinion that we provide on what we call that grant compliance audit is also an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. You will also find within that document the specific details of the individual grants that we tested, as well as any findings that we had as a result of those compliance tests. And I will tell you that we did not have any findings this year. So you won't find much reported in that report because we did not have any findings. And so that's also a very good report and good reflective of all the different departments within the county that receive grant dollars and administer those grant funds. They are doing a good job of that, at least based on the audit that we had this year that did not have any findings. So that is the very high-level summary. I know I went through that very quickly, and you have copies of our reports that we provided, and so I would be glad to take any questions that you might have as well on our reports, or if you just generally have questions about the audit process and the nature of what we do, I would be glad to answer those as well.
Commissioners, are there any questions? Doesn't look like there are. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Much, Shelley. Commissioner Peter John?
I'm just going to modify my earlier motion to receive and file also these 2 audit reports and have them included in the public record.
And I'll second that as well. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Madam Clerk, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Commissioner Norton?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Aye.
Chairman Ransall?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item M, report of the boards and of bids and contracts regular meeting on March 27th, 2015.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director.
This meeting on March 27th of the Board of Bids and Contracts resulted in 5 items that we're bringing to you this morning. Item number 1 is the tender pumper truck for the Sedgwick County Fire District number 1. This recommendation is to accept the best proposal from Pierce Manufacturing Incorporated in the amount of $388,979. Item number 2 is bridge improvements for Public Works. The recommendation is to accept the low bid from King Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $388,932.48. Item number 3 is the police Tahoe SUVs for fleet management. This recommendation is to utilize the State of Kansas contract number 39321 with Don Hatton Chevrolet Incorporated in the total amount of $279,962.10. Item number 4 is the gas chromatograph mass spectrometer for the Regional Forensic Science Center. This recommendation is to accept the low responsive bid from Thermal Electron North America, LLC, their option number 1, in the amount of $63,462.83. And item number 5 is financial advisory services for the Division of Finance. This recommendation is to accept the best proposal from Springstead Incorporated at the contracted rates listed, effective through December 31st, 2015, with 2 additional 1-year options to renew. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of these items.
Mr. Peterjohn?
Yes, on item number 3, Joe, can you give me a ballpark idea? We just got a single bid back on that one. How many firms did we solicit, and were they restricted to GM products in terms of what the specifications were calling for?
I believe I'll let Penny Poland. She has more details regarding that.
Penny Poland, Fleet Management. We were utilizing the state contract, so we did not solicit bids for this. And we did specifically request a Tahoe for the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, so there was no way that if there was another Chevy dealership in town that we were just restricted to that state?
This is the contract is with the state of Kansas.
Okay. Thank you.
And what we've done, Commissioner, we have before looked at the State of Kansas contract and done just competitive price comparisons, and that State of Kansas contract is very competitive.
Okay.
In this particular case with the Chevy Tahoes.
Can you tell me offhand how many other local dealerships have that state contract? I was thinking there's at least 2 that I know of. Is there any more than that?
There are currently 6 contracts with the State of Kansas that we're aware of on vehicles. 2 are for Don Hatton Chevrolet. 2 are for Shawnee Mission Ford. 1 is for Ed Bozart Chevrolet, and we have another City of Wichita vendor.
I was thinking Davis Moore.
Davis Moore. So those are the 6.
Those are the 6 that you know of. There could be more?
When we looked at the State of Kansas bid contract page, they listed just 6 with vehicles. And they were split, 3 for outside of Sedgwick County, 3 within our area. And that's the only number.
Help me out, because you mentioned 2 in our area. Is there the third one?
No, there were 2 for Don Hatton, 1 for...
Oh, 2 for Don Hatton.
Yes, sir.
But they're both GM?
No, there's GM, there's Ford, there's Dodge. I'm trying to remember what the other. I think those are the 3 major ones, aren't there, Penny?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? What's the will of the board?
I move we approve the recommendations of the Board of Bids and Contracts.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Commissioners, you have the consent agenda before you, and I recommend you approve it.
Commissioners, what's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
And do we have a second?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. Now we've arrived at next item is legislative issues, which we've added recently. I don't personally have any update on that. Commissioners have anything to discuss? We'll move on to other. Is there anything for the other portion of our agenda? Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, I guess, to announce or to reveal that last evening I had the opportunity to moderate a candidate forum at Bel Air City Hall. Had 6 candidates for 2 city council positions and 2 candidates for mayor in the city of Bel Air, and it was well attended, and I was really pleased at the demeanor of the candidates. They seemed to have a good grasp of the issues of that community, and were very passionate about their positions, and it was a very good turnout. So I guess the main point is to say congratulations to the citizens of Bel Air, because you've got a good group of candidates to select from. So a nice event. I might also just add that there's, on another totally different item, but there's been quite a bit of talk in the newspapers lately about Airbus moving out to the Innovation Campus and I think they're going to have almost 400 engineers employed out there, and then WSU coming back downtown to take the Airbus space. And I just thought it would be good to reveal a little bit of history that in the year 2010, Sedgwick County Commission unanimously approved a $200,000 forgivable loan to Airbus to keep them in our community. At that time, they had about 200 employees here, and the promise was to add 80. So now they've added well over 100 beyond that, and so it's a good example of how our efforts in economic development, and with that particular incentive, that tool, we were able to keep Airbus here instead of letting them move down to Mobile, Alabama, where their local CEO indicated that they had a lot of pressure to move. But it was a 4-0 vote. I think at that time Commissioner Norton was absent on that day, but Commissioners Peterjohn and Welsheimer and Chairman Parks and myself all voted in favor of it. So that's a victory in that sense, and we just want to congratulate Airbus and tell them we appreciate their presence in our community. That's all I have.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hesitate to correct Commissioner Unruh, but in 2010, Commissioner Peterjohn was the chairman of the county commission that year, and I've got the plaque in my office to prove it if you want to come by and see it, Commissioner Unruh.
No contest.
But let me point out that April 1st is a very important day in American history on a whole bunch of different levels. In 1789, the United States House of Representatives held their first full meeting and elected Frederick Muhlenberg of Pennsylvania to be the first Speaker of the House. In 1865, on April 1st, the Union Army won the Battle of Five Forks that caused General Robert E. Lee to send a message to Jefferson Davis indicating that Petersburg and Richmond must be evacuated, and it was the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. April 1st, 1945, American Army and Marines began the landing on Okinawa, biggest land-sea battle of the Second World War, more casualties than any other battle, I believe, in the Pacific during that conflict, began on this date in 1945. On a more positive note, 1954, April 1st, the United States Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, Colorado, was established. So April 1st is a very important day in American history, and Mr. Chairman, I had to appreciate letting me get this on the record this morning.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Next is executive session. I do believe we have a need for an executive session. Commissioner Peterjohn?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for consultation with legal counsels or matters privileged in the attorney-client relationship relating to legal advice, pending claims and litigation, and legal advice related to personnel matters of non-elected personnel, and we'd return to this meeting room no sooner than 12:35 p.m.
I'll second that motion. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Unruh.
Aye.
Commissioner Norton.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Aye.
Chairman Ransall.
Aye. We'll now move to executive session.
Production and broadcast costs for Sedgwick County Commission meetings have been underwritten by Sedgwick County.